Welcome back to the Moto HQ podcast. You know we love to take deep dives into all things moto, and today, well, we're going under the hood in a different way.
Yeah, we're not talking about engines or horsepower this time. Today, it's about the data your car is collecting about you, sometimes without you even knowing.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it. Your car's basically spying on you, keeping track of all sorts of stuff.
Exactly. And the question is, what are they doing with that data? Who has access to it? And should you be concerned?
To get to the bottom of this, we dove into a whole stack of reports and investigations.
Yeah, we looked at some big names like Consumer Reports, Cold Fusion, Informative Picks, CNN.
And let's not forget Steve Lato, Jeff Buys Cars, CBS 4 Indy, lots to unpack here.
Our goal today is to break down.
So let's just jump right in, shall we? First things first, what kind of data are we talking about? What is our car actually snooping?
Okay, so pretty much every report highlighting this driving behavior.
So, like, if I'm a bit of a lead foot, my car's judging.
Basically, Consumer Reports, Cold Fusion, CNN, they all said that braking habits and acceleration, how quickly you speed up, it's all being recorded.
And this is no surprise, but it's not just how you drive, it's where you drive too, right?
Absolutely. Cold Fusion, CNN, and CBS 4 Indy all pointed this out. Location data. Your car knows where you go, when you start and end your trips, and how many miles you put on.
GPS on steroids, I guess. Is there anything else it's keeping tabs on?
Oh, you better believe it. Your infotainment system, that's a goldmine of data.
Really? What? Because I'm blasting 80s hair metal bands on repeat?
Maybe. But Cold Fusion and CBS 4 Indy said they're looking at the apps you use, map searches, even voice commands. But that's just scratching the surface. It gets even more personal.
More personal? How? What else could they possibly want to know?
Well, some of the sources, Cold Fusion, Informative Picks, Jeff Buys Cars, probably something pretty wild. Facial expressions.
Facial expressions. How's the car even doing that?
Through cameras, most likely. Some reports even suggested, this is where it gets really interesting, data on sexual activity.
Hold on. Sexual activity. That's just... I don't even know what to say.
It is a little unsettling. How are they getting this info? Informative Picks mentioned all sorts of sensors in the car. Microphones, cameras, it's all connected.
Yeah, all those fancy features.
Another big concern is Skip Leto dropping
Hang on. Downloading my text messages. That's crazy.
There's also a motion to the state about this action. Steve Leto mentioned that he got dismissed, but the fact that it's even happening is worrisome.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got all this data being collected. Who's the culprit here? Is it just the car companies themselves?
Well, Consumer Reports did a huge investigation. They found that almost every major automaker in the U.S. is in on this.
Every major automaker. Really? Can you give us some names?
Sure. They listed BMW, Ford, Toyota, Honda, GM, Stellantis, Nissan, Kia, Subaru, Tesla.
Okay, so it's not just one or two bad apples. It's pretty much the whole industry. How are they even getting all this data?
Mostly through that infotainment system we talked about. And then obviously the connected devices.
Yeah, you rarely see a car these days that doesn't have some kind of app to go with it.
Right. And then you've got all those sensors we mentioned before, plus microphones, cameras, and of course your smartphone, if it's connected.
Okay, we've got the what and the who. The big question is, where's all this data going? Who's getting their hands on this information?
Okay, so this is where it gets real. And it might hit you right in the wallet. Consumer Reports, Cold Fusion, CNN, they all said insurance companies and lenders are getting this data.
Wait, so my car is ratting me out to my insurance company?
Pretty much. They're using this to assess your risk, which could mean higher premiums.
So not only am I paying an arm and a leg for the car, but it's also helping to jack up my insurance rates. That's fantastic.
Yeah, not ideal. And it gets worse. Some are calling it a driver score, like a credit score for driving.
So if I slam on the brakes too often, my driver score takes a hit.
Exactly. And don't forget about those data brokers. Cold Fusion, CNN, CBS 4 Indy, they all mention companies like LexisNexis and Verisk.
I've heard of LexisNexis. They're like information hoarders.
Basically, they collect tons of data, including driving data, and sell reports based on that.
To who? Like, who's buying this information?
Anyone who wants it. But one of the big ones, the insurance industry. They use it to assess your risk and set your rates.
That's scary. So even companies I've never heard of could have my data and be making decisions about me.
It's a real possibility. And informative picks, Steve Leto and CBS4 Indy all mentioned that government entities and law enforcement are accessing this data too.
Oh, great. So not only is my insurance company judging me, but Big Brother might be watching too.
It's not entirely clear how they're using the data.
Yeah.
CBS4 Indy also said that the automakers' affiliates and service providers might get their hands on it.
Wow. So this data is going everywhere. Are there any examples of this actually happening to people in the real world?
Absolutely. Cold Fusion had a story about a Toyota owner who had a fire in their car. Toyota denied their warranty. The car's data showed they had driven over 85 miles per hour at some point.
Even though the speeding had nothing to do with the fire.
Exactly. It just shows how this data can be used against you in really unfair ways. And there are tons of stories about insurance.
Oh yeah, insurance is probably where this hits people the hardest.
Definitely. Cold Fusion and CNN reported on this guy, Ken D, who drives a Chevy Bolt. His insurance went up 21% after his data was shared with LexisNexis.
21%? That's a huge jump.
It is. They had a 130-page report on his driving habits. There was another story about a Corvette owner. Apparently, he took his car to a track day, just for fun.
And that messed up his insurance.
Yeah, it potentially ruined his insurance score. And then there's this Cadillac owner. Cold Fusion and CNN reported that he got denied insurance by 7 companies because of his LexisNexis report.
7 companies? That's insane. This is starting to sound less like legal collection and more like a digital collection.
Yeah, the potential for misuse is really concerning. Jeff Buys Cars talked about how companies might be collecting data on really sensitive things like political opinions and even sexual activity. Nissan and Kia were mentioned specifically.
This just keeps getting crazier.
And Jeff Buys Cars reporting on Tesla employees allegedly accessing and sharing videos from customer cars.
Wait, what? So not only is Tesla collecting data, but their employees are potentially spying on people too.
It's a serious Washington State highlighted just how murky legal something
It seems like companies are pushing boundaries further and further with little regard for our privacy. So what can we
just blindly click agree on those infotainment system setups. CNN both said that those privacy policies are so you might be able to
I'm definitely but even if you don't agree, you lose access.
That's the frustration. It's mentioned that opting out things like roadside assistance or practical.
So it's like they're holding those features hostage to force us to anything we can do to take access.
A few things. Consumer reports said that most automakers that request limitations on data. Usually, you have to fill out some forms on their website or mess around in their app settings. It's not always easy, but it's possible.
It sounds like a bit of a hassle. Are there any other options?
CBS4 Indy mentioned this website, vehicleprivacyreport.com. You can enter your car's VIN and see what kind of data it tracks.
That's handy. At least you can know what you're dealing with.
Right. And CBS4 Indy also said there are companies like Privacy4 Cars that will help you delete personal information from your car.
So there are some tools out there. What about laws? Are there any regulations to protect us from all this data grabbing?
Consumer Reports mentioned that California and some other states have passed privacy laws giving consumers more control, including the right to opt out of data collection.
So maybe there's some hope on the horizon. Have we heard anything from the automakers themselves about all this?
Consumer Reports reached out to them and got some interesting responses. Ford said they don't sell data to brokers, and they give customers choices about data sharing.
Sounds good, but are they actually following through?
Hard to say for sure. GM said data is essential for their services, and that they share de-identified information with partners to improve safety. But then CNN reported that they stopped sharing this information. LexisNexis said
So maybe they are starting to feel the pressure. What about startups?
they just What does all this mean for the idea of a car as a private space?
Yeah, that's a good question. It used to be that your car was your own little world, a place where you could be yourself. But now it's like you're driving around in a surveillance pod.
Exactly. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, please subscribe and leave a review for the MotoHQ podcast. Your feedback helps us bring you more insights like this.
So the big takeaway here is that modern cars are data gathering machines, and you need to be aware of what they're collecting and how it's being used.
The really interesting part is that the long-term implications of this data collection are still unknown. How else might this information be used in the future? What kind of regulations will we see?
It's a rapidly evolving landscape, and we need to stay informed. We encourage you to do your own research. Check your car's privacy settings, even if it's boring. Read your automaker's privacy policy, even if it's long and confusing. And consider requesting your data from those companies.
It's all about taking control of your digital footprint.
And if you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe to the MotoHQ podcast and leave us a review. It helps other people find the show.
So, next time you're behind the wheel, think about this. Your car knows a lot more about you than you think. Who decides how that information is used?
That's something to ponder. Thanks for listening to the MotoHQ podcast. We'll catch you next time.